Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Digital Supply Chain Podcast. My name is Tom Raftery, and with me on the show today, I have my special guest, Isaac. Isaac, welcome to the podcast. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate you having me. Yeah, so I'm Isaac Hetzroni, also known as a sourcing guy. I am founder and CEO of Imprint Genius. We are a global product sourcing agency based in the US. And I'm also the owner, I guess, of The Sourcing Guy, which is my personal brand. It's a blog and course content creation kind of group where we go and teach people about product sourcing, supply chain, and just trying to make the entire concept of sourcing easy.
Okay, and why? As in, how did you get into this? What was the kind of genesis for you waking up one morning and deciding to start Imprint Genius and the Sourcing Guy?
Yeah, so I'm kind of a sourcing baby of sorts. On my mom's side, my family owned a small apparel factory based in Canada. And on my dad's side, for the last 20 years, he owned an electronics factory in China. So since I was a little kid, was always in manufacturing and supply chain. And then decided to start my own kind of agency, starting off first in promotional products and sourcing those kinds of products, and then into general product sourcing, kind of growing my own agency. I just saw there was so much need in the space for companies to get assistance with their sourcing. So decided to, kind of create the whole company around that. And then I also realized that some people just need more education. It was very hard for me to learn about sourcing other than going to my family and asking them questions or physically sourcing. So I want to create an easy place on the internet for people to be able to go and learn and, especially learn not just China, but learn about how to source from countries all around the world.
Okay. And for people who want to know more about that, they just go to the website, The Sourcing Guy, and are they free resources? Are they paid resources? Is there a mixture? How does all that work?
Yeah, so you can go on the sourcingguy.com. We have about 35 articles finished, teaching people about supply chain. I'm launching a full sourcing course in about a month. That's going to be primarily free. There are going to be some paid sections on that. And then also we're on YouTube and TikTok posting a lot more general content and education stuff on there.
Okay, cool. And I mean, you mentioned China, but also the rest of the world. So is the material there very China focused? Is it mildly China focused? Where does China fit into all this? Because obviously China is a big place to source stuff for many companies.
Yeah, so I would say it's primarily China focused, but it's also just fundamentals, right? So learning about the concepts around the freight forwarding and quality control, inspections, managing production, negotiating with factories, building out tech packs, packaging. So these are lessons that can apply no matter where you're manufacturing. And then we're also building out the global guide. And the goal of the global guide is to be an atlas for every country that has manufacturing, where you're going to be able to go and get all the important information about that country. So it's okay. I've never thought about sourcing from Sri Lanka. What do I need to know about Sri Lanka and the economy and the production types and what are all the different pieces that I need to know before going in, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's very hard to find all this stuff. So when I flew to Sri Lanka for 2 months to go source products for our customers, it took a really long time to get a hang of, what business is like there and what kind of production is best to be done there. We do a lot of research. So now we're just taking all the research that we did and then we're creating articles and guides around that.
Okay. And, what are the differences between sourcing in somewhere like China and somewhere like Sri Lanka?
Yeah, I mean, so look, China's still king, but not for everything. What I would say is China is fantastic, especially when you're starting out with sourcing, because they're able to work with much, shorter lead times. They're able to do a lot of technical production, fantastic for electronics. They're able to work on, again, lower volume overall, and they're going to be a lot more catalog based. So, you can go to the factory in China and say, that makes water bottles, and you get a whole catalog of their bottles. But if you're going to a different country, for the most part, it's going to be higher volume production, but you will see some cost savings a lot of the time. So how I recommend it is when you're getting started out, start with China. It's going to be a really great way, especially if you're going to do like private labeling or white labeling. And then once you start to get to serious scale, the product that you're doing has volumes in the thousands, tens of thousands. You might then see some benefits of going overseas to other countries because of savings in mostly labor costs, right? Some other ways that you might see some savings has to do with raw materials, but it's rare. For the most part, when you're working with let's say you're working with, Vietnam or Sri Lanka, these places are getting a lot of their raw materials from outside of that country. So a lot of times they're even getting it from China. So you still kind of are working with China, but your savings are going to be because your cost of labor might be half than comparatively to China, which wasn't the case before, right? Before it was pretty fair game across different countries, but the cost of labor, as you know, has skyrocketed in China.
Okay, and what about things like regulatory issues? Is there a big difference between dealing with regulations in China versus other countries in the region?
What I would say with regulation is that, it depends on the product, but for the most part, the products that have a lot of regulation, a lot of times are in China, right? So think about like electronics being a really big one. And the factories are going to have a lot more experience dealing with, let's say UL and dealing with the different certifications there. When you're going to another factory, let's say you're producing in Cambodia, I couldn't really see you efficiently producing complex electronics and making it all up to spec within those countries. They're just not specialized enough in those industries. So yeah, from a regulatory standpoint, if you do have a product that's pretty regulatory focused, I would go with countries that either have a very strong expertise, right? So like South Korea is fantastic for cosmetics, and the factories there are gonna have the certifications to be able to export. And then from a regulatory standpoint as well, it's also important when you're looking at what factories you're going to work with, where are they currently selling, right? So if you're working with a factory, let's say you found a factory around 1688, right? 1688 is like the Chinese equivalent of Alibaba. Well, a lot of times the suppliers on 1688 are going to be focused on the Chinese marketplace, right? So if majority of their exports are, either, selling to non-Westernized countries, right? Then there's a good chance that they haven't set themselves up properly from a regulatory standpoint, and the products aren't up to kind of that U.S. code. So a very easy way to kind of figure that out is ask the factory, what's your breakdown for your exports? What countries are you currently exporting to? And that should help.
Okay. And how do you assure the quality of the goods that you get from whether it's Cambodia or Sri Lanka or Vietnam or China or wherever?
Yeah. So what I would say is, the most important thing, I guess the best sourcing tip I can give is hire inspection agencies, especially ones that you can trust, reputable ones, because they're going to be, if you can't physically be there, they're going to be your team on the ground at the factory inspecting the goods. Giving a really, really good spec sheets or tech packs or whatever you want to call it to your inspection agencies is going to be crucial, right? Because they have to understand what are they comparing it against? What's the benchmark here? So that's one huge piece. Sourcing based off of import records is also a pretty, a great way to source that we like to do. So you can use stuff like sites like Import Genius, Import Yeti, and look at where some major companies are manufacturing their goods and try to utilize the same factories, right? So if I know that Alphalete is using this one factory and they're doing tons and tons of volume with that factory, they're a multi-million dollar brand, then that factory that I'm utilizing, if they're able to go and sell to a major retailer or sell to a major brand, then their quality levels are probably at the level that I'm going to need. And it helps, reduce the risk. So I guess you could go through import records. You can also ask who do you currently sell to. If they're selling to places like Walmart, there's going to be a lot more certifications and inspections are going to go into that whole process. And then to backtrack a bit from a quality standpoint, I have another piece, but we can just continue on.
Okay. And how about ensuring that the manufacturers are, partaking in ethical and sustainable manufacturing practices? Is it the same thing? Is it inspection teams, or are there other ways of ensuring that?
Yeah, so there are certifications out there already. So you don't necessarily have to go, and you can have, a private company go in and run, those kind of inspections and check for that. But there's our reports, let's say like the BSCI report, which is a kind of like a social audit and responsibility audit. And that needs to be updated every year. So by being able to look at those audits and kind of see, how socially responsible the factory is doing, the organizations doing the BSI reports are interviewing employees anonymously. They're getting a lot of really great data. So the BSCI report looks good for the most part. You should be in good shape. There are instances of people kind of bribing, or people, factories showing fake BSCI reports, but all of the kind of global reports can be cross-referenced. So if you go and you get a BSCI report, you can go to essentially to the inspection agency or the organization, and you can verify and say, hey, I have this report from this factory. I just want to verify this is true and accurate. And then Alibaba additionally has a verified badge where they are cross-referencing with the agencies. And if a factory is Alibaba verified, that's going to mean that all of the certifications and reporting is accurate, which is a huge help as well.
Okay. And what are your thoughts on using Alibaba for sourcing goods?
So I think Alibaba definitely gets a bad rap, but mostly because it's a search engine that no one knows how to use. So just like Google, there's a lot of things that you can do to kind of filter results to find the best pieces, but a lot of times it can be hard to find exactly what you're looking for. And Google is the best search engine in the world. Alibaba is not necessarily the best search engine in the world, but that's what it is, right? It's an engine to find factories and suppliers. So I'm doing, like, within the sourcing course that we built out, that there's a full Alibaba breakdown, explaining how we filter through Alibaba. But the biggest thing is utilizing the filters on the side, right? Being able to kind of filter for what you're looking for top suppliers. Also, don't search for products, search for suppliers. That's a really big piece on Alibaba. So if you're looking for socks, don't type in the socks in the product category, type in socks in the supplier category, right? So that way you can be filtering based, and you could just be looking at supplier to supplier. And because at the end of the day, you're trying to find not the best sock, you're trying to find the best sock supplier, right? The best partner for you.
Okay.
So I think with Alibaba's trade assurance program, with the different verification pieces, and if you're able to learn how to filter Alibaba and also filter out all the agencies on Alibaba that aren't real factories, then you're in really good shape, right? You're able to utilize it to find amazing suppliers, and you shouldn't be too scared.
Okay. COVID zero, that policy seems to have been, well, it's gone away following the protests. That obviously had huge implications for people who were sourcing from China. Is that it? Do we think is it likely to come back? How did it affect your sourcing up until now? What were the implications of it, and what do you think about the future based on that instance?
Well, I would say that we are doing our best to build out other supply chains outside of China and remove our full dependency on it, just due to how insane the last few years have been,
Yeah.
unpredictable the last few years have been. If I could perfectly predict how China's going to react, then I would be putting my money in the stock market. But what I would say is that, the big issue with China is that they had the COVID zero policy, right?
Mm.
So they weren't allowing for herd immunity, and they're just being super strict. So one person gets sick, they lock down, a whole factory, they lock down whole regions. Now that they've loosened up, and, something huge percentage of China got COVID within a few week period once they open things up. Now people kind of have this immunity. So I'm hoping that they're going to kind of keep things pretty lax. And I think that's going to be hard to push people back. But again, I don't want to, again, depend on China as much as possible. So for all of our customers, we're actively working on, building out other solutions, other supply chains, backup suppliers outside of China. So if anything does happen like that again, we're going to be, prepared.
Okay, cool. How do you maintain strong relationships with your clients and your suppliers? I mean, what are some of the key factors that contribute to successful partnerships? It's got to be challenging when, you know, I know you're based out of, is it the US or Canada? You're based out of North America anyway, and they're, in Southeast Asia.
Yeah. So, face to face is obviously a huge part of things. So what I'm doing is half the year I'll be in Southeast Asia, visiting factories and making that home base, and the other half of the year in the US, dealing with the customer side, the team side. From a relationship standpoint, I think that people undervalue just being kind of genuine. So treating things like a friendship, FaceTiming your suppliers, talking about, the bar you went to last night, telling them fun stories about America. They want to hear that kind of stuff, right? If you're able to break past the, very business-like, hey, I need pricing on this, I need better terms on this, and you're able to build even the slightest bit of personal relationships, send them a gift every once in a while, just stay on top of, building a personal relationship, it goes so far. So what I'd say is, just be human, treat them like buddies, send them pictures of stuff that you're doing, updates in your life, try to remember to touch base every once in a while, and you'll be surprised how far it goes.
Okay. And in terms of your customers, I mean, what is it that you are supplying for them typically?
Yeah, so what we try to do is be more than the agency, right? Because obviously you can go to China and find a sourcing agent, but what we're trying to do is really become, a part of their supply chain, part of their procurement process, and look at the program holistically. So instead of saying, okay, we're going to go and get you, these yoga pants and they're going to cost you $12 and that's delivered and that's the whole piece of relationship. It's more of a holistic approach of like, okay, let's look at all your product types. How can we create consolidation within your different products? How can we recommend new products to you? How can we improve your overall logistics? What are you guys doing for your 3PL? How is that working? Could we do any type of, domestic production or on-demand production to, improve your supply chain? A good customer example is that we have on our website, we made a video for, we were going and sourcing their products and, they're a subscription box company. So we were producing, tens of thousands of boxes a month and producing everything that goes inside the box. And that was great. But when we came in to really build a relationship with them and learn about their business, we were able to create a bunch of supply chain efficiencies from doing kitting overseas, essentially moving the entire production overseas so we could do all the kitting there, having everything fully consolidated and then shipped over. That process, aside from the savings on the unit cost, the process just on like a supply chain consolidation standpoint saved them probably between $150,000 and $200,000 a year.
Wow. And what kind of technology or digital tools do you use to streamline your supply chain processes and improve efficiency?
Yeah, so there's definitely a lot of different ways that you can, look at it. So from a basics perspective, if we're building a complex supply chain, using Gantt charts is super powerful. So taking a Gantt chart and really breaking down all the different orders and all the different steps within a process that you have. So if you're able to visualize, when do we need all of the artwork done? When do we need to finalize product? When do we need to send a deposit? When do we have to have all the items finished? You're able to kind of visualize like a map, right? Say, okay, all this stuff needs to be done. But these pieces, if we're able to go and execute all this properly, we're going to be able to consolidate all the shipments together, and then we're going to be able to get everything done. When you look at your entire supply chain on the product by product basis, it's very hard to run it efficiently, right? But once you're able to put everything together into something visual, you're able to find efficiencies. And then from a technology standpoint, softwares like Anvil are fantastic for, managing all of your purchase orders and productions and shipments. So, if you do have a lot of things going on and production going on, getting a software like that, like a production software, can be really helpful.
Okay. Do you have any customer success stories you can speak to?
Yeah, what we'd like to do, like I just mentioned, that Creative with Loved One, with the description boxes is something that we're really proud about. And, we love taking, complex supply chains with lots of different products and then consolidating and adding those efficiencies. Some other, customer pieces have been within like the apparel space. So we have a large business in the corporate merchandising space. So essentially doing product sourcing for companies that need all their uniforms, all their company swag and that kind of stuff. We built out our own app and technology that builds out online storefronts so that people can go and choose whatever swag they want versus being just given an item, right? And that's like kind of the biggest waste piece within promo, is that you go to a conference, you get a bunch of stuff that you don't really want. So we build up these online storefronts where people can choose from, 100 items, 1,000 items, 10,000 items. It's really up to the company. We produce primarily on demand, but we have a hybrid-based supply chain system for that. So, if someone sees a drone or a water bottle or a backpack, 90% of the time it's going to be on demand. And then 10% of the time it's going to be something that's going to be in inventory. So we were able to build up, obviously we have tons of case studies on the corporate side of how this, is a way more efficient system for, companies to manage their swag, cutting costs, lowering risks, and then creating a better customer experience. But what's really fun is taking that technology and applying that on the e-commerce side, right? To other businesses that are, apparel-based businesses that traditionally either had to choose, like, am I going to build an apparel-based business that's fully on demand, right? So I'm taking basic SKUs and like using a Printify or Printful, and that's my supply chain. Or am I doing a straight inventory program, right? So I go and I produce everything overseas or some stuff domestically. I have everything on shelves, and now I have to sell through my inventory. When it sells out, right? So where we're seeing a lot of success is kind of utilizing our on-demand and hybrid-based supply chain systems over on the e-commerce side for these stores so that they can go and we can take the top items and more unique SKUs, do all that overseas, put that in inventory, then taking everything that is, to the more generic items, the stuff that's going to really fill up the catalog, we can go and do those on demand. And then everything in the middle, right? So, okay, if we need to produce 50 t-shirts of a certain piece, or we need to laser engrave 40, right? So those kind of mid-tier quantities, we're able to go and do domestic production and domestic decoration. So where I'm just really excited about this kind of new age supply chain within apparel merchandising and e-commerce merchandising, because it creates a lot of efficiencies, and while also giving a better kind of customer experience.
Okay. And in terms of swag, should companies white label, or should it be custom manufactured, or what's kind of best practice there?
Yeah, so I think for swag, white labeling and utilizing, pre-existing SKUs is going to be your best bet, unless you're at a certain scale. So, if you need to produce, a few hundred t-shirts or whatever it is, or a few hundred water bottles, go and utilize an existing stock, right? So either use a factory that's already producing a water bottle, pick from their catalog, have them decorated for you with your artwork and your logos. Same thing with any type of domestic production. You can go through a distributor like us, and we can kind of produce your stuff for your general goods. But the one exception I would say is on the swag side is if you have the volume for it, right? Let's say you're a Google or a Facebook. Go and do a full cut and sew production for your apparel and for your clothing, right? Make those hoodies super customized with custom tags and different, small decoration pieces and elements to really create a retail grade product. And I really think if you have the volume to do it and you have the resources to do it, it goes a really long way on the swag side. But unless you are at kind of that place where you're buying thousands of units, I would say white labeling is going to be the most cost efficient way for you to do your swag.
Okay, makes sense. Where do you see the future of this market going in the next 5-10 years?
Like the swag market?
Yeah, and sourcing in general. I mean, seeing as you're the sourcing guy.
Yeah, so I think that there's going to obviously be a big shift, as there is right now, a much larger shift to production to other countries. I think that a lot of other countries are going to become a lot more nimble and allow for lower minimums, and they're going to be able to start servicing, US based or global companies just like China does. And so I think a lot of factors in other countries are going to start creating catalogs, allowing for catalog based production. I think on the swag side, I think that there is going to be, a massive shift over on demand swag. I think that the cost basis to decorate something on demand versus decorate it, in bulk, at least domestically, is getting closer and closer to being the same. So, as that they kind of catch up to each other, it becomes inefficient for brands to go and produce massive amounts of inventory and kind of warehouse these goods for their swag store programs. It's going to be a lot more efficient to just have stuff on demand, make it produced, on demand, and I think they give people more options, more flexibility with what they want to get.
We're coming towards the end of the podcast now, Isaac. Is there any question that I haven't asked you that you wish I had, or any aspect of this we haven't touched on that you think it's important for people to think about?
Yeah, well, you mentioned something about kind of white labeling versus custom manufacturing that I think is really important to talk about. So I think that a lot of people, when they go into producing their first product, they assume that they need to do something full custom, right? They need to go and create a tech pack for this new t-shirt and they have to build, create all these complex drawings and hire engineers or whatever the product is. But the majority of products on the market in any country are going to be white labeled products, right? They're going to be products that people are just going to factories and they're producing based off of pre-existing specs. If the main selling point of your product is your marketing and your designs, you should be white labeling. It's going to reduce your cost basis. It's going to reduce your MOQs. It's going to reduce your overall risk of your production, right? Because the factory is producing stuff that's tried and true. They're not doing anything full custom for you. And then go focus on what is your differentiating factor, your designs, your marketing, your sales pitch, your branding, all those different pieces. If you are building something that, is very, very focused on the features and that there's nothing like it on the market and that is your main selling point, yeah, go and do your custom manufacturing, go through the whole process. But at least when we're working with companies, I would say 80+% of the time, they think that they need full custom manufacturing, but really there's already a great product on the marketplace, that from a great factory, and all they need to do is just private label it to start off, and they're able to get to market way faster with way less invested.
Makes a lot of sense. Great. Isaac, if people would like to know more about yourself or any of the things we discussed in the podcast today, where would you have me direct them?
Yeah, so you obviously go to sourcingguy.com. I'm at the Sourcing Guy on TikTok and YouTube for you to learn more about sourcing and supply chain. If you want to learn more about our agency and kind of what we do, we're Imprint Genius, imprintgenius.com. And, feel free to follow me on Instagram if you want at Isaac Hetz. I'm always posting, fun factory tours and stuff that I'm up to. So
if you shoot me across those links, I'll stick them in the show notes, and that way everyone will have access to them, Isaac.
Perfect. Thanks, Tom. Appreciate you having me.
Thanks a million for coming on the podcast today.